If you're a Divi user, you've probably seen one of my videos which talks about the Divi framework called SiteKrafter. Now, of course, I may not go into a lot of detail, but the really cool thing now is I have a demo for you where you can go ahead, play around with SiteKrafter before you can actually commit to purchasing it. So all you have to do is to head over to SiteKrafter.com. And by the way, there is a 40% discount. So what you do when you come to SiteKrafter.com, head over to the main page here and click on Try SiteKrafter. So what happens here is it creates the whole SiteKrafter on a demo Divi website. So all you have to do now is to click on launch. But before I do that, notice that this site will expire in 1 hour. But that gives you enough time to play around with the features once you've installed SiteKrafter. So why SiteKrafter? You should probably been asking. Well, this is one way that you can build consistent, fluid looking websites from scratch. Now, this is going to save you a lot of time, especially if you're a freelancer or you're a design agency. The most important thing is time. So gone are the days of going in and adding all your different sizes for different screen sizes. SiteKrafter has all that for you by default. So right now we're logged into our admin dashboard, as you can see, and you can see here it says SiteKrafter 5.1.5. This is the latest version. So what we want to do now is to take a look at the home screen. So I'm just going to open this in a new tab, and you can see here that this is our basic page. So you may be wondering, well, it's too basic. Why? Now this gives you the opportunity to go in and make some adjustments. But before I do that, I want to show you the first key areas that you may want to look at before you start doing anything with SiteKrafter. So the first thing you want to do is to head over here to appearance, and then you want to go to customize. So here on customize, the very first thing you may want to do is to change your brand colors. So you'd come over here to general settings, and then you go to layout settings. And this is where you want to change your primary color and secondary color. Now, once you've done that, the second thing that you may want to do is to head over to typography. So here is where you'd set your fonts. So by default, our body font is set to Inter, but you can change this to whatever you want. So here on the header font, you can change this from medium to bold. And you can see it has just updated. And again, this is Inter, but you can click on this drop down and choose whatever font you want. So I want to keep things very simple here. I'm now going to publish this. Now let's head over to a brand new page and let's start designing. So I'm going to come over here and click on page, and we're going to open this in a new tab. So how SiteKrafter saves you time first is by sorting out all your font sizes. So here, let's call this page fonts. Okay, use Divi Builder, and since this is a new site, it's just going to go in and give us these three options. So we want to design from scratch. So let's go ahead and add two columns here, and in this column we're going to add some text. Okay, so I want to go in and paste some text like that. So out of the box, you can see that this text here, the size is not right. Okay, I'm sure you and me can agree on that. So what you want to do straight away is just to, in fact, I'll do a demo first and then show you what you need to do. So I'm going to add some headings in here and assign them. So I'm going to say heading 1, and then I'm going to say heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, and so on. Okay, so I've named my headings. All I have to do now is to highlight and make sure I set it to heading 1, go on to the second one, set this to heading 2, go on to the third one, set this to heading 3, and so on. So now that I have all my headings and my paragraph text, like I said, we all can agree that the size is too small, and we don't really want to go in and enter the sizes manually. So what SiteKrafter does is it allows you to add shortcuts, which is over here on CSS ID and classes. So I'm just going to enter SK. Now notice now that the size has changed, and these sizes are mathematically calculated to look awesome on pretty much any website. So now that I have this, I may also want to recommend that you also come over here to the top and you also come over here and set this as a preset. So I'm going to come over here and create new preset from current styles, and I'm going to call this main text. So that's all you need to do. Apply this as a default, and then boom. Now, just by doing that, all the fonts you're going to add on your are going to be all consistent, and they're all going to be good sizes. So let's head over here and add another text module, and let me show you what that looks like. So let's say I enter that, and I want to make sure that this is set to heading 1 or heading 3. I can just set it like that, and now the sizes are okay. So you may be thinking, well, how is this responsive? Do I need to go in and make sure that the sizes are correct on different screen sizes? Well, absolutely not. I'm going to save that and exit the Visual Builder. So let's test and see if this is fluid. Now I want you to take a look at the size of the headings and the text as well. So as I'm making this window smaller, look at that. It is so smooth that I don't need to change any sizes. You see, it is fluid, and this applies to every font you're going to add from this moment onwards on your website. All right, so let me show you something else that is also really awesome here, and that is the reference page. Okay, so we're going to come over here to our dashboard. We're going to go to pages, and here we have a list of pages. So we need to take a look at the reference here, which is the framework. So we're going to open this in a new tab. And here it is. So this is the framework. So the one that we've just done is called fluid text. So there are also other ways that we can go in and play around with our framework here to save us a lot of time. So let me show you a few things. So if I come over here now to enable, we can come down here, and perhaps you want to add a blurb. So when you add a blurb, you notice that again the size is not correct. So what you want to do here is to come over here to advanced, CSS ID and classes, and then set this to SK, and now automatically you have fluid fonts. So once you have this, you may also want to go in and perhaps maybe change the size of this. So I'm going to click here, and we're going to change this from H4 to H5 because maybe the text is a bit too big. So once you've done that and you're happy with that, you can also set this as a preset as well. Okay, so that means whatever blurb you're going to be adding on from this moment onwards, it is going to have the same size. All right, so let's go ahead and save. Now, as you're looking at this, you notice that things are very close here, and that is not normal, and that is not good. Now, this is done intentionally because you want to make sure that the spacing that you have across the whole website is consistent. And when we come over here to our framework, you're going to notice that we have our responsive margins. We also have responsive padding. But anyway, let's come over here to our responsive margins. So you can see here, margin top is XX small. So perhaps maybe we may want to go with margin top medium. Okay, so you want to go with the bold one. Okay, so this is what you need. I've just copied that. So back over here now, if I go into my blurb, I can now head over to advanced, CSS ID and classes, and then I'm just going to add a space and then hit enter. And now you can see my margin has been added. So now I know that my margins here are going to be pretty much the same. So margin top, I can say large if I wanted to. And again, these sizes are done in such a way that it's all fluid. So if I were to shrink this, you'll notice that the sizing there, it gets smaller and smaller based on the screen size. So it's not a fixed number. Otherwise, the spacing will be way too big on all devices. So all this is done in such a way that it is really, really cool. All right, so I'm just going to delete this and show you other tricks that we have up our sleeves. All right, so let's say you want to use a Flexbox. So what you can do here is perhaps start by adding your blurbs. So we're going to add 3 of them. In fact, we might as well fix this one here. So let's go ahead and add SK, and then we're going to come over here to design and say, you know what, we want to change this text to heading 5. And then once I'm done with that, I can now go in and say, okay, I want to create a new preset. Okay, so we're going to call this default blurb. Okay, apply this as a preset across. So whenever I need to style this, I can always come in and style it later. Okay. So let's go ahead now and save. So let's say we have maybe 3 of these, but we want to set this up as Flexbox because we don't want to use these columns. So what you want to do now is to go to your row settings. You go into this column, advanced, ID and classes, and then I'm just going to type in Flexbox. Now look at that. Now they're all spaced out evenly. So now when I save this and I exit the Visual Builder, let's save and exit. Okay, great. So now when I make this smaller, watch what happens. Everything is responsive. So just by doing that, this has saved me a lot of time. So like I said, your best friend is going to be your framework over here. So you have your sizing, you also have your fluid responsive padding, you also have responsive sections. In fact, let's do some padding here because that's really fun as well. So let's say you want to add a bunch of text. So let's go with 2 columns. So here we're going to add some text. So in this text here, let's add a bit of a background. So we have a very light background like that. So what we need now is to add some padding, but this padding needs to be fluid. So we're going to come over here to advanced ID and classes. So we're going to say now padding dash large. Look at that. So just by doing that, my padding now has been applied to this blurb. Okay. Of course, we want to add SK so that everything is, the right size. So just by doing that, we are cool. Next, if we come over here, if we want to add, let's say, a notice, we could, first of all, we add our text, and then we're just going to say notice like that. And then all we need to do is to come over here to advanced ID and classes. So making sure our SK is there, we can now say notice, and we have our notice. If it's a warning, we can just come over here and say warning. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Now, of course, you're probably thinking, well, is this padding really responsive? Well, let's test it out. I'm going to make it smaller, and then we're going to take a look at it over here on the bottom. Now look at that. The sizing has adjusted based on the size of the screen. Look at that. So now it's going to get bigger. Where is it? There it is. It's going to get bigger and bigger as I'm changing my screen size. So this is what makes designing with this framework really awesome. Now we also have other features. I haven't covered everything. We have shadows, we have transparency, we have border radius. So for border radius, let's just do this quickly. So let's say we want to add a radius. I'm just going to copy this, radius large. And then again, we're going to come over here. So all you need to do is to go in and add your classes. Look at that. I've just added my border radius. So let's say you want to add perhaps shadow. So if you're not sure how to add the shadow, you come over here to framework, and then you're going to go to your shadows. So you can see here it says shadow large. Okay. So that's what we need. Shadow dash large. So we're going to come over. So we're going to come over here. So this time for my shadow to show, I want to make sure that I don't have my background, or perhaps maybe even make it lighter. Okay. Like that. So now when I go to advanced ID and classes, and add my shadow, you can see now my shadow has been added. So this is super powerful because if I want to add my shadows quickly, this is what I need to do. Now, if I wanted to go in and add them manually, here's what I would need to do. I would need to go into each and every item I need to add a shadow to, and then go into design. I'll need to look for box shadow, and then look for the shadow, and then start making all my adjustments to it like that, perhaps. Okay, so you can see here there's quite a bit I need to do to achieve this. And let's say I want to add this to maybe an image. I would need to go do this manually. But in this case now, if we use the framework, I can apply this shadow to an image if I wanted to. So let's go and add an image like that. And this shortcut is going to apply pretty much everywhere. So this time we are going to choose an image. Hopefully I have my image in my library here. Of course I do. I'm going to choose this one here, upload image. Okay. So now that I have my image, I can now go to advanced ID and classes. And the first thing I need to do is to add a margin top. So I'm going to say margin dash top, and I'm going to say large. Okay. And then I'm going to add my shadow. So shadow large, and you can see now that my shadow has been applied. I know it's not very clear here, but this is how I would add my shadow pretty much to anything that I need to add on my site. So this is the power of using SiteKrafter. So go ahead and test pretty much all these other items here. We have our notices, as I mentioned. We also have our fluid headings. So you can literally go in and add your heading. So let's say you want to use XX large as your massive heading. We can go ahead and add a single row, and let's add our text. And with our text now, let's just reduce the size a little bit. It's a bit too much text. We're going to come over here to advanced, and then I'm just going to set this to XX large. So with this selected now, I can also add bold like that. Now, how do I know I need to add bold? Well, if I come over here to my framework, we also have our font weight. So we have weight bold, we also have semi-bold, medium, and so on. Okay, so now we have that. We can go in and center it if we need to. So we're going to come over here and center our main heading like that. Okay, so as you can see, it is very, very powerful, especially if you want to make your headings for marketing. So whatever text now or whatever information I add underneath, I can just go in and add my sizing. So let's say I save this and I add another module, and perhaps this is a text module as well. It's going to be very close to my text, as you can see. So I can now come over here to advanced ID and classes, and I can set this to margin top, margin dash top, and then I'm going to set this to medium like that, and make sure I've got XK just in case that it goes away. And then after that, I can now add my call to action button. So let's say I add a button like that. So I know it's going to need the padding the margin as well. So I can go into my alignment, center this first, come over here to advanced, margin top, and margin top is going to be small. Okay, look at that. So this text as well, it is responsive, and our spacing is also responsive here as well. So let's try this. So you can see there it's getting smaller, and our spacing as well has gone smaller. Yes, so this is the framework. Go ahead and try it out before you actually purchase it. As I mentioned, this is 1 hour. 1 hour is enough time to play around with this. But like I said, this is the most important part. I've also done some more videos to show you how this, you can use this and how it works. So go ahead, test it out, and see if this is right for you to use as your workflow. I will leave some of the links to some of the tutorials that I've done as well in the video description below about SiteKrafter. So go ahead and check it out. At the moment, it's still on 40% off. So go ahead and purchase it as offer is still available. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one. Take care.